Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Auburn Undercover podcast, live on the 24/7 Sports Network and live on the Auburn Undercover YouTube channel. Shout out to everyone that's already in the chat. We've been live for about 10 seconds when we already have 200 people that are already watching live. So appreciate y'all tuning in on signing day eve. Christian Clemente here, joined by Jason Caldwell. We'll get Philip Dukes in here soon. He's working those scoops. He's trying to get intel, trying to get information leading into signing day, but we should get him in here shortly. We're going to be answering y'all's questions, probably go for about 30 minutes or so, probably a little less than that. We obviously had our show yesterday talking about guys, and Jason, as we've broken down, there's really only 6 guys, and Ryan Williams is expected to wait until February. Cohen Eccles isn't expected to announce anything until Friday on his birthday, and I guess you could say guy we didn't mention yesterday that we probably should have, Towns Magoo, the kicker out of Auburn High that Auburn really hopes to add as well, battling there with Ole Miss. So we'll break down those guys. We'll take y'all's questions. I'll hit this question first from Marcus in the chat. Is Hugh still having his press conference at 12:30? Seems like an odd time with the announcement schedule. As of now, that's what it's still scheduled for. Now, it's not like Hugh is necessarily scheduling the press conference. That kind of comes from Auburn Athletics scheduling it a little bit, and you also have to work around their practicing for the bowl game tomorrow as well.
Yeah, another thing to remember too is some of the guys that are announcing afterwards are guys that are committed and have been committed for quite a while. So I mean, I don't know if there's much maybe suspense for those guys. They may go ahead and announce those guys as signees anyway. They can still have their announcement at school and do all those things and already be signed and it already be done. So sometimes those things happen as well.
Yeah, Jason, what's your feeling going into tomorrow? How are you feeling on the guys that Auburn is still going after, and how are you feeling just in general about Auburn's class?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really changed. We talked about it last night, and I still feel like Auburn's in really good shape. With the first thing you have to do is keep the guys you got. So that's the first order of business. Still feel good about that for Auburn. They had some people coming after a few of those guys. Obviously, Perry Thompson's one that a lot of people have asked about. But still, nothing has changed for me. Everybody I've talked to, everything I feel like they still feel like that Perry's there for Auburn, and that will be good. The other guys, it's really interesting. I still think we both agree that of the guys that are out there, Amaris Williams feels like the guy that probably is the most likely for Auburn. But you start thinking about the other guys. The guys that everybody talks about is KJ Bolden, LJ McCray. I think Auburn has given itself a shot with both of those. Can they finish? Faber Edwin's a guy that I think Auburn we talked about before he came on is still in the mix with a little bit. So there's a few things that could fall on signing day, but really nothing's changed. It still feels like Auburn's in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Welcoming in Dukes now. He's out busy, like I said, getting information for y'all and getting stuff. Dukes, before I go to you, everybody that's tuned in right now, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube. Totally free. We just got past 9,000, so we're making the push for 10,000. We're going to have our signing day show tomorrow night at 7 Central. We locked in the time, 7 o'clock. We've already locked in. Sorry. So someone in the chat said Duke's out at Buford High, question mark.
That is undercover work. We can't tell where he is.
It is Auburn undercover. But Duke's, just your thoughts going into tomorrow, and everyone wants to know it in the chat, of course. KJ Bolden, you've been all over that recruitment. It's been shifting around a bunch over the past 48 hours or so. Just your thoughts on KJ and your thoughts going into tomorrow.
I think with KJ, it's probably a lot of things change, and we talked about it yesterday. I felt a little bit better. I think Georgia made a serious push today. I know a lot of people give Steve Wiltfong a lot of stuff, but he is really plugged in, and we know a lot of the same people. So we actually shared some notes earlier, and I can confirm that Georgia did make a major push. I also think that Auburn is pushing just as hard, and I believe Florida. I feel even this is probably going to be closer than it was the first time. I think it's probably all three schools are involved. I think tomorrow there's going to be a lot of intrigue, and it's one of those things where I wish I could make Auburn fans feel better and say, yeah, I feel great about it, but I don't. I feel like it's going to be a game time decision, and from the time he wakes up in the morning to the time he makes his commitment, it could change 9 times. I'm just telling you, like, it's one of those type of recruitments where it feels like he may not know why he walks in, and I think he'll take up multiple hats and multiple shirts, and I think the family is going to be very well prepared for whatever his final decision is. For people who are fans of Auburn, what you should be proud about is this wasn't one of those things where you get a guy who gets stuffed in a locker, so to speak, right? Whereas your head coach is just wasn't ever in it. He's getting played the whole time and all that type of stuff. No, that's. I think Hugh Freeze has really changed the future for Auburn. I can say that. And as far as the landscape and how people view Auburn, Auburn is in it. Auburn is in it with L.J. McCray. Auburn is in it with Amaris Williams. Auburn is still in it with Cohen Eccles. Auburn is in it with Favor Edwin. I mean, every guy that is thinking about Auburn in their top 3, they're really in it. And I think there will be some surprises tomorrow. And Hugh Freeze is one of those guys that, as long as I've remembered him, especially in the SEC, he's always had a surprise up his sleeve on signing day. Go all the way back to 2016-15. He was always able to do something in the fourth quarter, and I don't think this will be any different. I don't know who it's going to be, but I think Hugh Freeze is going to come up with something big tomorrow.
I would agree with that. I think we all feel pretty good about where Auburn sits with Amaris Williams. Ohio State has kind of launched back into that recruitment. Florida's been trying to hold on as well. And Jason, we talked about it on the show yesterday. He's a fringe 5-star guy. That's still a huge addition. But I also do kind of feel like Hugh Freeze is going to have one more trick up his sleeve tomorrow besides just potentially flipping Amaris Williams.
Yeah, it's a possibility for sure. I think you look at it and as we talked about, how much does this building, how much does it impact? Because, one of those guys, and as Duke said, most of these guys, might have an idea. For a guy like KJ Bolden, I don't think this thing is even close to done when he goes to sleep tonight, if he goes to sleep at all. That's the kind of night it's going to be. I mean, it can be a lot of phone calls, a lot of text messages, a lot of talking, family talk. I mean, it's a tough time. I talked to somebody today, and they said, look, you talk to some guys, and these things change by the minute. This is not by the day or not by the hour. This thing changed by the minute sometimes. And so I think that's what you have to look at with some of these guys. For a guy like LJ McCray, he's been set for so long. Can you do enough to change it and go, hey, boom, that's it, and break those ties? That's what you're trying to do with guys that are committed. Feels like a little different with KJ Bolden, because even when he committed to Florida State, you go, that even there you felt like that Auburn and even Georgia were guys that were still in play, that it was a commitment, but it wasn't quite done yet. And so we'll get the final answer on paper tomorrow.
Dukes?
Hey, so my phone is about to die. I need to put it on the charger, but I did want to put this out. I still do feel like Auburn's in a good spot with A.J. Harris. I don't feel like Auburn is in as good as a spot with Jamon Dumas Johnson. I feel like I think earlier I responded to something on the board. Make sure you go subscribe to Auburn Undercover, but somebody put a question out. I answered it right then around maybe 11 o'clock. It was Auburn, Kentucky. I feel like Kentucky made a major move over the past in the last 48 hours, and I according to intel and people in the know, I think that Dumas Johnson will probably end up at Kentucky. There's another guy in the portal that Auburn is really high on. I'll get more information. Well, that should be. I think he's in the portal, or I don't know if he's committed to another school already in the portal. But there's another guy that Auburn has their eyes on, and I think that people will be really excited about what they do at linebacker. All right, guys, I'll see y'all.
All right, see you, Dukes. We'll have Dukes on tomorrow for the signing day show, like I talked about earlier, and got distracted by someone saying that Dukes was at Buford High. We've already confirmed quite a few guys. Jason, you talked to Jamonte Waller. He'll be on the show tomorrow. Walker White, Kensley Faustin, Jalen Crawford, DeMarcus Riddick, Cam Coleman. We're going to try and get as many of those signees on as possible, so make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube so you don't miss that. Dukes just left us there with some good information. Someone in the chat was the question I was going to get to next on A.J. Harris and the linebacker. And Jason, I kind of want to touch on that a little bit, actually, with A.J. Harris, because we got the news yesterday that Keontae Scott wanted to move out to cornerback. It kind of leaves you in an interesting spot where you have Keontae Scott at cornerback, You have Kay and Lee. You maybe have AJ Harris in the fold. AJ Harris could maybe move back to safety. I think he could be a free safety type guy. If you missed out on a KJ Bolden, you could maybe look at playing AJ Harris in that spot. It's an interesting situation and probably a good situation for Auburn.
Yeah, it is. And I think versatility is one of the things you look at in this class and with the defensive backs as a group, because what you don't want to get is to a situation where you get, hey, these guys can only play this spot. This is the only thing he can do. And you think about guys they've signed, whether they'll sign tomorrow or in last year's class. We think about, talking about Tyler Scott. T. Scott's working at the nickel some. He was more of a corner. He's working at the nickel some. We've seen some of these guys work a little bit of safety. And I think about this class. I think Kinsley Falston is a guy that is a safety, but he's not a big safety, but a guy that could probably slide in the nickel a little bit. Amon Lane is a guy that can play corner, can play nickel. Caleb Harris is a guy that can play safety, maybe star linebacker is what I think he might be down the road. Versatility is huge. And AJ Harris is a guy that can do those things. Could play outside corner, could be a nickel, can do some of those things, could probably play safety. And I think it's one of those things where come in, see what the fit is for this defense and try to put all the pieces together, because it took a while for this year to figure out what those pieces were on defense. Obviously, then Keontae Scott becomes that nickel, and this comes the blitzing guy. And because of the injuries they had a little bit, they couldn't really put him outside at corner because they didn't have enough guys inside. Now you start to have some pieces a little bit. And AJ Harris is a guy that can play a number of different spots, and you just go, hey, come in, let's see where it fits, and let's see, the place that makes this defense the best would probably be the thing.
Here's someone in the chat, and this kind of goes to a point that I made earlier today. Someone said, as long as we get a signature from Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson, I'm good. Anybody after that is the cherry on top. Jason, we talked about that yesterday on the show a little bit in terms of just the way Auburn's class has kind of set itself up, for one thing. For the second thing, even if you strike out tomorrow, you miss out on everybody. It would feel like it would stain at the time. You would still sign. You'd be close to top 10. You'd be inside the top 12 for sure.
Yeah.
And I don't think Auburn's going to strike out. I think you're still going to find your way inside the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of what I was talking about a little bit yesterday. It's like, because of what Auburn's had at wide receiver the last, you've had bits and pieces. You had, Seth Williams and Eli Stove and Anthony Schwartz, and you've had some bits and pieces at wide receiver. But before this thing started, if you'd have told me that you're going to have one of Cam Coleman and Perry Thompson, the way Auburn's wide receiver could read it, I said, yeah, that's pretty darn good. To get both those guys is incredible. But the two guys that get lost in the shuffle, to me, we've seen a bunch of Bryce Cain and Malcolm Simmons, two guys that can really play. Bryce, both of them for different reasons are still kind of raw in what they're doing. Malcolm's a guy that has played running back, is big kick returner, plays defense, is an exceptional punter. Folks, we'll go ahead and tell you right now, don't be shocked if Malcolm Simmons is punting for Auburn before he's done. Not just, hey, we need an emergency guy. This guy can legit punt, and he can do some of those things. Bryce Cain, maybe there's a lot of fast guys in this state right now. I don't know there's anybody that's faster than Bryce Cain.
No, there was a –
can do a lot of things. And so, I mean, to have the group they've got right now, and you finish with those guys tomorrow, Auburn would have helped itself immensely at wide receiver. There's no question.
At wide receiver and just with the entire class in general.
Yeah.
You were talking about speed. Everyone except for Bryce was there on Sunday for the visit. And I think it was Cam and Perry were racing each other at the facility on Instagram Live, trying to figure out who was faster. And Malcolm Simmons was live. And I think someone wanted him to race Ryan or someone wanted him to race Bryce. And he said, I'm not racing either of those guys.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. Yeah, it's there's some speed, but you're right. The wide receivers get a lot of the talk, and that's kind of how this started. But this is a class that's filled a bunch of needs. And the interesting thing is people keep asking about the offensive line. And we've talked about it before. It's not a hugely deep offensive line group. Now, there's a couple of guys they would absolutely love to add, and Cohen Eccles and Favor Edwin, to what they've got already. But they've done just an exceptional job of getting the offensive line to a point where you don't have to go out and just sign bodies. That's what they had to do last year, and it worked out really well for them. They don't have to do that right now. They can go get quality guys with a really strong 2025 offensive line class. They can afford that luxury right now. But when you think about the linebacker group, to me, when you start talking about, the wide receiver group on offense, the linebacker group on defense, when you think about DJ Barber, DeMarcus Riddick, Joe Phillips, Jamonte Waller, and that's an incredible group of guys, and guys that you could have all four of those guys on the field at the same time in different roles down the road, and could have some legit, havoc creating guys, for a defense. That can be fun to watch.
Here's a question from Matt. Any update on Bama D-line commit Jeremiah Beeman? No. He pretty much just shut things down. Look, I'm sure Auburn will try a midnight phone call. They'll see if they can work anything last second, but he's pretty well shut things down. He's pretty much set to sign with Alabama.
Yeah, we talked to him a good bit. We could pretty much tell when we were in Hattiesburg that was pretty much done, because there wasn't a whole lot of interaction for us and Jeremiah Beeman, and he's a guy that we talked to a bunch, and that's normally that kind of sign for us.
Here's a question from Corey. Know anything about the Maryland tight end transfer that was offered? They offered, I believe his name is Rico Walker. He played 1 year at Maryland. He was a 2023 recruit and then entered the transfer portal. And then the second part of the question, the visit not go well with Skinner. It did go well with Jaleel Skinner, the Miami tight end transfer. Sometimes guys just aren't necessarily exactly what you're looking for. That doesn't mean Auburn's not going to take Jaleel Skinner, but as of now, it kind of seems like they're looking around to see what other options there may be. And Rico Walker, Jason, is that new name that's popped up with 3 years of eligibility after leaving Maryland.
Yeah, I think that's it too. You start going, hey, what are you looking for? What's the fit? And people ask, they asked me, I think it was last week in the Friday mailbag, about evaluations. How does it work? And I said, hey, part of that is seeing a guy in person, seeing what a guy looks like in person. How big is the guy? Bigger than you thought? Is he smaller than you thought? There's a lot of things that go into it, and so I think it can be something as simple as, hey, can this guy get to where we need him to get to in terms of weight? Because I think, what was Jaleel listed at, 210, something like
210,
that?
210, yep.
And so you start going about, okay, can this be a guy that gets to even 235, 240? And how does he? So a lot of that, hey, and it's guesswork, everything, but it's an educated guess where you go, hey, the frame, all those things, can you get to where we need to get? And that may be a question for Auburn in terms of that tight end position.
Here's a question from Chris. Will we have anyone representing 24/7 at KJ Bolton's announcement? Not from Auburn Undercover. Buford High School is about 3 hours away. Hugh Freeze has his press conference at 12:30. We get to watch bowl practice actually shortly after that as well. So we need to be there for the press conference. All of us need to be there. Myself, Jason, Nathan. Maybe Dukes will be over at Buford. I don't know. I don't know what Dukes' plan is tomorrow, actually.
Signing day is such a difficult day to get somewhere, because there's so much going on, because there's so much happening. It's hard to be on the road and be out of pocket for 5.5, 6 hours, which is what it would take to go to Buford and back with Atlanta traffic, with everything going on. You basically would throw away the entire day. So I think Ben Woke is planning on being there, I believe. So we'll have somebody from the network there. Obviously, Ben covers Georgia, but a lot easier trip for them to go up. And so, there will be somebody there from the network. So we'll have eyes there.
Yes. One, people will say, oh, well, the Georgia guys go in there, so that's all I need to know. It's a lot easier for Ben to get over there than it is for us. And someone was asking on the message board, is anyone going to any of the three announcements? The three big ones is in Amaris, LJ McCray, and KJ. KJ's 3 hours away. Amaris is in North Carolina, probably 7 hours away, and LJ McCray is also 7 hours away. So maybe if we had a monster staff of like 10 of us, maybe one of us could go out there, but not quite.
It's hard when there's so much going on. It really is. And these would be things that maybe if Amaris or one of those guys was announcing on Monday, to where you would not miss this entire day, then it makes it a little bit easier. That's why the signing day ones that are boom, it's on signing day. That's why most of the time you try to get all those on TV, or I do a live announcement, because it's just about impossible for lots of folks. Normally that's where your local people are involved, your local newspaper, or if somebody gets a heads up, say, hey, we think this may be coming, you might send somebody there. But it's pretty difficult to take out 6 or 7 hours of the day. Yeah,
it's like if Cam Coleman hadn't already been committed to Auburn, and we felt really good about where Auburn's at going into tomorrow.
That'd be a possibility. Or Malcolm Simmons or somebody like that.
You could drive 30, 45 minutes down the road and drive back. But it's tough to take a big chunk out of the day on signing day when we're all trying to work the phones and we're all trying to work different live update stories and signees coming in, stories, stuff like that. So we're all gonna be located in Auburn, working here, working on some stuff. Jason's gonna start the day, I think, with some Byron's breakfast, which is a great way to start the day.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be my early morning. See how that'll treat me tomorrow.
Jason, this might be a complete random question, or it might be an inside joke that I don't know about on the message board from Corey.
It is an inside joke. No, it's so well before your time. We had one of these signing day announcements that I indeed traveled to. It was in Birmingham. Birmingham, excuse me. Peanut Whitehead was a 5-star pass rusher from a Birmingham high school. And it was Auburn, Alabama. There were some other schools involved. Louisville happened to be one of them. And so there's a bunch of folks that cover Auburn, a bunch of folks that cover Alabama. And Peanut Whitehead puts on a Louisville cap. We say he is going to Louisville. And when he announced it in the library, it was dead silence. I mean, nobody said a word because everybody was kind of shocked. And then there were some claps. And then most of us that covered Auburn, Alabama packed up our stuff and got back in the car. So that's how these days go. Sometimes it's ones like that make you wary about about going somewhere. And as Marcus mentioned, it happened last year as well. Drove up. At least that day turned out well because that day ended up in Highland Home.
But it was a lot of driving.
A lot of driving in between, but it ended up at Highland Home for Keltry Falk. So not as much up 65, up 280 and down 65. But once I got past Montgomery, it turned into a better day.
We're going to hit a couple more questions here. Here's one from Red. What do y'all think about Tua's little brother, Talia, opting out for the Auburn versus Maryland bowl game? We can touch on that real quick. We got to talk with Zion Puckett, Jalen McLeod, and Elijah McAllister earlier today. Jason, Maryland is a team that loves to throw it around, and they don't really have a quarterback who has done that whatsoever behind Talia.
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about. This is not, running back where you plug in the next guy. I mean, this is a guy that's basically taken every meaningful snap for the last 3 years or 3 or 4 years from Maryland. The guy that I watched in high school 4 or 5 times at Thompson, so I know Talia is similar to his brother, not probably 5'11", 6 foot tall, but a guy that can really play and is a great fit in that offense. So take him out of the equation. I think I did it today. They're the two quarterbacks combined that we're expected to see against Auburn were 6 for 13 for 20 yards, no touchdowns and 1 interception. And the question will be, does this impact any of the wide receivers? To those guys going, hey, my quarterback's not there. I don't know if I'm going to do this now. That's where it could have an impact. So we'll see if there are any other guys that decide to do something. But I think for Auburn, we talked to those guys. Look, in the end, it doesn't change things because you still got to go out and perform and do those things. But it definitely, I would say that it doesn't hurt Auburn's chances when you take away a guy that's thrown for 11,000 yards. I mean, he has been a juggernaut in terms of throwing the football.
Hit a couple more questions here. Here's one from John. So y'all going to Auburn High then? No, not planning on it. But
you know what? There is an interesting part of this one at Auburn High School because I think they're going to do theirs in the afternoon. I believe.
I think it's 3 o'clock. Yeah.
Yeah, and so J.R. Buckner is an Auburn deep snapper commitment. Prefer walk-on kid that wound up being in the Alabama Mississippi All-Star game as well, and so. That might be a case depending on how long we're out at Auburn bowl practice at 1:30. Mike could slide over there and get a couple of pictures of those guys. So there's a possibility depending on how the timing works after Hugh Freeze practice and being up at 5:30 and doing all that stuff. I might be asleep on a couch somewhere by then, but we'll see.
Here's a good point from Mike. Have Mark Murphy take the motorhome over to Buford. Yeah, that is an option.
that would work. It would work. Hey, believe me, if we got wind that it might be a good day for Auburn and we knew, then we would not hesitate to have somebody make that trip. And so that's the case.
Here's one from Jay Sykes. Will there be commitments happening at the same time as Hughes presser? Amaris Williams is planning to announce something at 12:40, and Hughes presser is at 12:30. So that's interesting. Was talking with Jeffrey Lee the other day when we were kind of saying wouldn't surprise me if Hugh walks in about 15 minutes late for his press conference and could come in saying, just got another big one, something like that. So, so we'll see. I don't necessarily anticipate it starting directly at 12:30, but they do a football practice. So I don't know. We'll see. Let's see. Are there any other questions? I think we've hit on pretty much everything. Jason, I'll let you touch on, someone was asking about Favor Edwin again. I'll let you touch on him just one more time. The offensive tackle from Eagles Landing Christian Academy that Auburn has been heavily in pursuit of. Florida it looked like he was going to commit to Auburn, and then Florida made him hold off a little bit. And then it looked like he was going to commit to Auburn again, and then Alabama made him hold off a little bit. Since then, Alabama has really kind of picked up the steam, but as we were kind of figuring out earlier today, Auburn is not out of it fully going into signing day.
I think the key has been Auburn's been there the whole time. Will that win out? Lots of times it does. I think this one's one that if Auburn does indeed win out and sign Favor Edwin, I think it's going to be relationships. I think it's going to be Colton Hood. Having that familiar brother figure type guy there. Colton Hood's the one that basically talked him into playing football. He was a basketball kid. This is a very similar story to Prince Tega Wannago Jr., a guy that was a basketball kid from Nigeria that came in as now a football player and turned into an offensive tackle. Auburn, while it's a different staff, Auburn has already shown that they have the blueprint to make that work. I think he and his mom especially are very comfortable with Auburn. Will that be enough? I think that's the question mark. But I think that's the thing for Auburn right now is that, hey, be taken care of. You got a guy there that that'll take care of you, and it's a staff you trust. So that could be a factor for Favor Edwin here down the stretch.
I'll do some super quick hitters here. Big Main, what time does KJ announce? His signing ceremony is at noon Central Time. You can find all of that information, when commits will sign, when targets will sign, live updates, all of that at Auburn Undercover. We have our signing day HQ. It's been up for 5 hours already now. We've already had updates going. So you can find all that there. A question from Orion. Any JUCO surprises tomorrow? Well, they would be surprises to us as well. There's no one that I've heard of in terms of JUCO guys that Auburn is going after. So I think we're gonna wrap it up there, Jason.
I mean, two JUCO guys that they have commitments from. We expect to sign Laquan Robinson, Seth Wilford, those two guys. But other than that, normally a junior college kid would be a guy that you would want to bring in for a visit. Now they could always bring in and have a guy that was a surprise visit, but we don't believe that's been the case. So I think this one is the guys you have on the board. Get those guys in the house, see if you can pull off a few surprises, and boy, if you do that in your Auburn, by the time we talk to Hugh Freeze tomorrow afternoon, and by the time they're out of practice, that would be a happy bunch.
Yes, it will. And it should be a happy bunch tomorrow at 7 o'clock Central Time, 7 p.m. I think our buddies elsewhere are doing a show at 7 a.m. That's a confusion in the chat. People are asking when we're going live. We're going live here at 7 p.m. We're going to try and bring on as many of the signees as possible. Already confirmed quite a few of those. So make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. I'll make sure that everything's up on the Auburn Undercover message board. We'll tweet it out. We'll keep you all updated, but make sure that you're subscribed so that way you can just go to YouTube and find it. And then make sure you're – go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, I was going to say, and, for those folks that are wanting to watch it, I think at 9 o'clock Central Time on 24/7 Sports YouTube page,
yes,
our national guys will be live, and they'll be updating stories from all over the country. It's a really interesting show to watch because
you'll get Steve Wilf on live, Andrew Ivins. Yep.
Yeah, they'll have coast to coast Brandon Huffman out there. I mean, there'll be lots of stuff going on. So that's a way to keep up with things throughout the day. And then we'll have you locked in at Auburn Undercover, Twitter, all those things. Be trying to keep up with what should be a pretty fascinating day.
Yep. So we'll see you over on the Auburn Undercover message board. I've already got a little update to put over on the board here in a little bit. So see y'all there on the board. See y'all there tomorrow morning. We'll get our updates rolling probably around 5:30 a.m. again tomorrow morning. And then we'll see you over here on YouTube at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. Hope y'all enjoy signing day, and we'll see you over at Auburn Undercover and again here tomorrow night.